Commander Axe stood on the bridge of his warship and looked at the blue planet through the viewing screen. Earth, a small world spinning in the darkness of space. After 30 years of watching and waiting, the Empire was finally ready to take it. The data scrolled across his screen. Humans were weak creatures. They fought each other constantly. Their technology was primitive. They still used chemical rockets to barely reach their own moon. Their weapons were simple projectiles and explosives. They had no energy shields, no faster-than-light travel, no unified planetary defense. "This will be easy," Axe said to his officers. "We will land, establish our base, and they will surrender within one cycle." His second officer, a tall named, nodded. "The invasion fleet is ready, Commander. 50,000 soldiers, enough weapons and supplies for 3 months. Our armor can withstand their primitive bullets. Our energy weapons will cut through anything they have." Axe activated the holographic map of Earth. Red dots marked major human cities. Blue zones showed areas of military activity, but there was a large yellow section in the eastern part of their largest continent. The computer labeled it Low Strategic Value Minimal Population Recommended Landing Zone. "The Gobi Desert," Axe read. "Perfect. We land here away from their major forces. We build our forward base. Then we strike at their cities before they can organize a defense." The officers agreed. Their computers had analyzed everything. The desert was empty. Hot, yes, but their environmental suits could handle it. There were no military bases nearby, no cities, just sand and rock. The humans would never expect an attack from such a worthless place. "Begin the landing," Axe commanded. The invasion fleet broke through Earth's atmosphere. 50 transport ships, each carrying 1,000 soldiers. Fighter craft flew in formation around them. The humans' primitive radar detected them immediately, but by the time their slow aircraft could respond, they were already on the ground. The ships landed in a wide circle, creating a perimeter 5 kilometers across. The desert stretched in every direction, endless waves of sand and rock under a burning sun. The sky was clear and blue, not a cloud anywhere. The transport doors opened. Soldiers marched out in perfect formation. Their armor glinted in the sunlight, metallic and advanced. They carried energy rifles that hummed with power. Engineers followed with equipment to build the base. Within the first hour, Axe knew something was wrong. "Commander, the temperature outside is 52 degrees, reported. "Our suits are struggling to cool properly." "Adjust the settings," Axe said. "Our technology is superior. We can handle some heat." But it was not just the heat. The wind picked up, and with it came sand. Fine, tiny particles that got into everything. The soldiers' armor joints began to grind. The equipment made strange noises. Engineers reported that the sand was clogging air filters and getting into mechanical parts. "This is unexpected," Axe admitted, "but manageable. Continue with the base construction." What they did not know was that they were being watched. Was 28 years old and had lived in the desert his entire life. He was a herder, like his father and grandfather before him. He knew every hill and valley for 100 kilometers. He knew where to find water when others saw only sand. He knew how to read the wind and predict storms. That morning had been checking on his small herd of camels when he saw lights in the sky. Bright streaks that came down like falling stars, but controlled and deliberate. They landed in the old basin, the place where nothing grew and no one went because it was too hot and too empty even for desert dwellers. He pulled out his binoculars, old but reliable. What he saw made his heart race. Ships, not human ships, strange shapes, metallic and alien, and figures were coming out of them. Soldiers in armor that caught the sunlight like mirrors. Was not educated in fancy schools, but he was not stupid. He knew what this meant. He grabbed his radio, the kind that worked even in sandstorms, and called the only other person within 50 kilometers. "Are you there?" Static crackled for a moment, then a woman's voice came through. "What is wrong? You sound scared. Was 30 years old, a teacher at the small settlement 40 kilometers to the east. She also grew up in the desert. Her family had lived there for generations. She and had been friends since childhood. Listen carefully. Something has landed in the old basin, not from Earth, ships, soldiers, a lot of them. Silence on the other end. Then are you sure? Did the heat make you see things? I am looking at them right now, through my binoculars. They are real, they are building something. Another pause. When spoke again, her voice was steady. Okay, stay where you are, stay hidden. I will call the authorities. Do not let them see you. Crouched behind a rocky outcrop and watched. More and more soldiers poured out of the ships. They set up large machines that began digging into the ground. Others unloaded crates and equipment. They moved with military precision but noticed something. They moved slowly, like they were tired or struggling. The sun climbed higher. The temperature rose, was used to it. He wore loose, light-colored clothing. He had water in his pack. He knew how to stay cool, but the aliens in their shiny armor looked uncomfortable. Even from a distance, he could see them moving stiffly. Made her calls, first to the local police, who did not believe her, then to the regional government, who also sounded doubtful. Finally, she called a friend in the military, a young officer named Wu who had grown up in a nearby town. This better not be a joke, Wu said. It is not a joke, saw them. He is watching them right now. They landed in the Gobi in the old basin, alien ships. Wu was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, stay on this line. I am sending satellite confirmation requests now. 5 minutes later, Wu came back. His voice was tight. Confirmed, we have visual, multiple large objects, heat signatures off the charts. Get everyone to evacuate the settlement. Move east away from the landing site. The military is mobilizing. This is real. News spread fast. Within hours, governments around the world knew. Satellites confirmed what seemed impossible. An alien invasion force had landed on Earth, but not in a city, not near military bases, not on a coast or in a strategic location. They landed in one of the harshest, emptiest deserts on the planet. Military commanders looked at the location and had the same thought. The aliens made a mistake. They chose the worst possible place to land, but orders went out anyway. Contain them. Learn about them. Prepare to fight. Axe stood in his command center as the desert sun set, painting the sky orange and purple. The base was taking shape, but slower than planned. Equipment kept breaking down. Soldiers were exhausted from the heat. Medical staff reported dozens of cases of heat-related illness, something that should not happen with their advanced suits. Status report, he demanded. Looked uncomfortable. Commander, we have lost contact with 3 perimeter patrols, 2 equipment failures, 1 possible hostile encounter. We detected primitive human communications nearby but assumed they were automated. It appears we were wrong. The humans know we are here. Axe felt the first touch of doubt. This was supposed to be easy. Land, build, conquer, but the desert was fighting them. The heat was fighting them, and now the humans knew. Double the patrols, he ordered, and fix the cooling systems. We do not let a primitive planet defeat us. But deep down, Axe wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. The desert wind blew across the sand, indifferent to the aliens trying to conquer it. It had been there for millions of years. It would be there long after they were gone. The 3rd day in the desert was worse than the first 2 combined. Commander Axe stared at the medical reports and tried to understand how this was happening. 200 soldiers were sick, not from human weapons, from the environment itself. Commander, the air filtration systems are failing, the chief engineer reported. The sand particles are too fine. They get past our filters and clog the machinery. We have never encountered anything like this. Axe looked outside. A wall of brown was approaching from the west. What is that? According to our scans, it is a sandstorm. wind speeds of 90 kilometers per hour, carrying billions of sand particles. It will hit us in 20 minutes. Seal the base, all soldiers inside, we can wait it out. But waiting it out was not simple. The storm lasted 6 hours. The wind howled like a living creature. Sand got into the base despite all their technology. It covered equipment, got into the air systems, and made breathing difficult even inside. The temperature dropped 15 degrees, and then when the storm passed, it shot back up to 50 degrees within an hour. Soldiers who had served in 20 different planetary campaigns said they had never experienced anything like it. The environment was hostile in a way that enemy weapons were not. Weapons could be dodged or blocked, but the heat and sand were everywhere, constant, wearing them down hour by hour. On the 5th day, a reconnaissance unit of 20 soldiers went to explore a nearby area that their scans showed might have water. Corporal Wu and his squad of 12 human soldiers were waiting for them. Wu was 26 years old. He had trained in mountain warfare and urban combat, but he had also spent 2 years stationed in desert regions. He knew how to fight in the heat. He knew how to use the terrain. "Remember," Wu told his squad as they crouched behind a line of rocks, "they have better weapons and armor, but we have the advantage. This is our world. They are struggling. Hit them fast and pull back. Make them chase us into the sun." The unit appeared, moving in formation across the sand. They looked impressive with their shining armor and energy weapons, but they moved slowly, carefully, like each step was difficult. Their armor, designed to deflect energy blasts and projectile weapons, was now a burden. It trapped heat inside. It made movement exhausting. Wu gave the signal. His squad opened fire. The human weapons were simple. Assault rifles firing metal bullets, nothing fancy, but they worked. The bullets kicked up sand around the aliens. Some hit armor and bounced off, but the impacts made the stagger. They tried to return fire with their energy weapons. That was when the aliens discovered their second major problem. Energy weapons generated heat when they fired. In normal conditions, this was not an issue. But at 50 degrees, with the sun beating down, the weapons overheated after just a few shots. They watched in confusion as their rifles shut down automatically to prevent damage. "Fall back," the alien squad leader ordered. Wu's squad did not chase them far. They melted back into the rocks and dunes, disappearing into terrain they knew intimately. They tried to follow but quickly became disoriented. All the sand looked the same to them. They had no landmarks, no reference points. One alien soldier collapsed from heat exhaustion. Another's suit failed completely, and he had to be carried. By the time they stumbled back to base, they had fired barely 100 shots total, and the humans had vanished like ghosts. 12 humans defeated 20 of our soldiers, Axe said in disbelief. "How is this possible?" "They know the terrain," Commander explained. "Our sensors are confused by the heat signatures. The sand reflects our scans. We cannot track them properly, and our equipment is not designed for this environment." Axe wanted to argue, but he could not. The evidence was clear. They were losing a battle against the planet itself. Meanwhile, at a research station 100 kilometers from the alien landing site, Doctor was being evacuated. She was 32 years old and had spent 5 years studying desert ecology. She knew more about the Gobi Desert than almost any other living person. "I don't understand why you need me," said to the military officer escorting her to the helicopter. "I study plants and animals, not aliens." The officer, a captain named Jin, smiled. "Doctor, you know this desert. The aliens chose to land here. We think they made a big mistake, but we need to understand exactly how big. What will this desert do to them?" As the helicopter flew east, looked down at the endless sand. "Everything," she said quietly. "It will do everything to them." At military headquarters, she was shown satellite images and combat reports. She studied them carefully, making notes. "They landed in one of the worst spots in the entire desert," she explained to a room full of generals and colonels. The old basin. No water sources for 200 kilometers. The temperature reaches 55 degrees regularly. The sand there is the finest in the region, which means it gets into everything. And we are entering storm season. They will face major sandstorms every few days. What about their technology? Jin asked. They have advanced equipment. Shook her head. Technology designed for controlled environments. Ship environments probably. Stable temperature, clean air, no particles. But desert conditions are chaotic. The temperature swings 30 degrees between day and night. The humidity is nearly zero, which dries out seals and lubricants. The sand is like a microscopic abrasive, slowly destroying anything mechanical, and the heat makes electronics fail. She pulled up a chart. Here is what they face. During the day, solar radiation is intense. No clouds, no moisture to filter it. Their equipment will overheat. At night, temperature drops fast. Metal expands and contracts, creating stress fractures. The wind never stops, always carrying sand. Water is precious. They need it for drinking, cooling, and their equipment, but there is none. An older general leaned forward. How long can they last? In this environment, with their technology struggling, thought for a moment. Weeks maybe, not months, they will break down. The question is whether they realize it soon enough to retreat. Back at the alien base, Axe was starting to realize. The casualty reports were getting worse. Not from combat, but from heat stroke, respiratory problems from sand inhalation, equipment failures, and accidents. They had lost more soldiers to the environment than to human attacks. We need water, the medical officer reported. Our recycling systems are failing. The sand is contaminating the water supply. Soldiers are getting sick. How much water do we have? X asked. At current consumption, 3 weeks, maybe less if the heat continues. 3 weeks. They had expected to conquer a planet in 3 weeks. Now they might not even survive that long. And watched from different positions around the alien base. They had been recruited as guides by the military. Their knowledge of the terrain was invaluable. They knew where soldiers could hide, where ambushes could be set, and where the aliens would struggle most. They are suffering, reported over her radio to Wu. I can see it even from here. They move like old men. Their camp looks disorganized. Equipment is piled up, probably broken. Good, Wu replied. We hit them again tomorrow. Small attacks then disappear. Make them waste energy chasing us. The desert will do the rest. That night another sandstorm hit. Smaller than the first, but still strong. The huddled inside their base and listened to the wind scream. Sand piled up against their walls. Equipment that had been outside was buried or damaged. When morning came and the storm passed, Axe stood outside and looked at his base. It looked battered, worn down, like it had been there for years instead of days. Solar panels were scratched and losing efficiency. Vehicles had sand in their engines. Soldiers looked exhausted and defeated. Perhaps we should request reinforcements, suggested carefully. The Empire does not send reinforcements to deal with primitive planets, Axe said bitterly. We are supposed to conquer this world easily. If we ask for help, it is an admission of failure. Then what do we do? Axe looked out at the desert. The sun was rising and already the temperature was climbing. The sand stretched forever, hostile and indifferent. We adapt, he said, or we die. But adaptation was not something they were good at. They relied on their technology, their superior weapons, their advanced armor. They had never needed to learn how to survive in harsh environments. Their empire conquered worlds by overwhelming force, not by endurance. The desert did not care about force. It cared about water, about heat management, about understanding the land. And the humans had 10,000 years of experience doing exactly that. The battle for Earth had begun, and they were losing to an enemy they never expected to fight. Captain Jin stood on a rocky outcrop and studied the alien base through his binoculars. He was 34 years old, a special forces officer from South Korea who had trained in 6 different countries. He had seen combat in mountains, jungles, and cities, but this was his first desert war. "They are making mistakes," Jin said to the officers gathered around him. "Big mistakes." Beside him stood commanders from 8 different nations: Mongolia, China, Russia, Kazakhstan, and others. When the aliens landed, old political arguments were forgotten. Now there was only one goal: drive the invaders out. "What kind of mistakes?" asked the Chinese colonel named. Jin pointed at the alien base. "Look at how they position their equipment, all clustered together. In the desert, you spread out. If a sandstorm hits or if the enemy attacks, you don't lose everything at once. But they keep their supplies in one location, their vehicles in another, very organized, very stupid for this environment." A Mongolian major named nodded. "They also move during the hottest part of the day. We have watched their patrols. They go out at noon when the sun is strongest. Any desert fighter knows you move in early morning or evening, but they follow a schedule like they are still on their ship." "They have never fought in a place like this," Jin concluded. "They have the best technology, but they do not know how to use it here. That is our advantage." Behind them, troops were gathering. Not just soldiers, but desert specialists, guides like engineers who understood how equipment worked in extreme conditions, medical staff who knew how to treat heat injuries, and local people who had lived in the desert their entire lives. Was explaining terrain to a group of Russian soldiers. She used to stick to draw in the sand. "This wadi, this dry riverbed, runs for 30 kilometers. The aliens cannot see it from their position because of the hills. We can use it to move troops without being detected. But be careful. If rain comes, water fills it fast. Flash floods." One soldier asked, "Does it rain here?" "Not often, but it can. And when it does, the desert changes in minutes. Dry sand becomes mud. Valleys become rivers. You must always watch the sky." Was teaching another group about water. "The aliens chose the worst place for water. There are old wells, but they are far. Secret springs, but you have to know where to look. The aliens scan for water with their machines, but machines cannot find everything. Sometimes water is in rocks, in small pockets. My grandfather taught me how to find it. I can show you." The human strategy was becoming clear. They would not fight the aliens directly. Not yet. Instead, they would cut off supplies, confuse their sensors, and let the desert do most of the work. Engineer Minyu was working on a special project. He was 29 years old and had designed electronics for extreme environments. Now he had a new challenge: create weapons that worked better in the desert heat than alien technology. "The problem with their energy weapons," Minyu explained to Jin, "is that they generate too much heat. In normal conditions, fine, but here they overheat in minutes. Our guns are simple, mechanical. No complex electronics. They work in any temperature." "But their armor stops our bullets," Jin said. "Yes, but armor also traps heat. They are cooking inside those suits. What if we make it worse?" Minyu held up a device the size of a fist. "EMP, electromagnetic pulse. It disrupts electronics, but I wrapped it in thermal shielding that activates in high heat. We set these around the desert. When aliens come near, the heat triggers them. Their suits malfunction. Not permanently, but enough to confuse them and make them overheat faster." Jin smiled. "How many can you make?" "As many as you need." Pilot Sara was preparing for the next phase. She was 31 years old and flew ground attack aircraft. Her plane was old, a model from 20 years ago. But that was good. Newer aircraft had complex electronics that could be damaged by alien weapons. Her plane was simple, tough, and reliable. "The alien ships have energy shields," she told her squadron. "But shields use power, lots of power. In this heat they cannot run shields and cooling systems at the same time. We have seen them choose cooling. That means windows of vulnerability. We hit them fast when their shields are down, then we run. We are not trying to destroy them, we are trying to exhaust them." The pilots understood. This was not about winning a single battle. It was about winning a long war of exhaustion. On the 10th day, the humans launched their first coordinated attack. It happened at dawn when the temperature was lowest, and the aliens were most likely to have their shields down to conserve power. Wu's squad, now 50 soldiers, attacked from the north. They fired from hidden positions, hitting the alien perimeter. They responded, but their energy weapons misfired in the cool morning air. Temperature changes caused condensation in their systems. Before the aliens could organize a counterattack, Sora's aircraft came from the south. 6 planes, low and fast. They dropped conventional bombs on the alien equipment yard. Explosions ripped through parked vehicles and supply crates. The aliens tried to activate their air defenses, but the systems had been damaged by sand infiltration. Only 2 defense turrets worked. The planes escaped with minor damage. Then, as the aliens scrambled to respond, Minyu's EMP devices activated around the base. The electromagnetic pulses disrupted alien communications and caused suit malfunctions. For 30 minutes, the base was in chaos. By the time they restored order, the humans were gone. They had struck 3 different points, caused significant damage, and vanished into the desert. Axe was furious. How did they coordinate this? Their technology is primitive. They used basic radio, reported. Frequency modulation, very simple. Our scanners detected it but dismissed it as not important. We were looking for sophisticated communications. We missed the obvious. And those electromagnetic pulses. Crude but effective. They used our own environment against us. The heat triggers the devices. In a cooler climate they would not work, but here they are perfect. Axe realized something terrifying. The humans were not just defending. They were adapting their tactics specifically to exploit weaknesses in this environment. They were learning and changing strategy every day. While they struggled just to keep their equipment running, the humans were innovating. We need to advance, Axe decided. We cannot sit in this base and slowly break down. We attack the nearest human settlement, take hostages, force a surrender. It was a desperate plan, but he saw no alternative. The humans learned of the alien plan through intercepted communications. Minyu had managed to decode some of their transmissions. The message was clear. A major alien offensive was coming. Jin called a meeting of all commanders. They are going to attack the settlement of population 8,000. It is the nearest human town, 140 kilometers east. We should evacuate, said. We will, Jin agreed. But we also prepare a defense. If they want to march across the desert to attack a city, let them. Every kilometer they travel weakens them, and we will be waiting. Spoke up. The route to cross is the worst terrain. Soft sand that makes vehicles sink, rocky areas that are hard to cross, and the sun will be directly overhead for most of the march. It is suicide. For them, yes, Jin said. For us, it is an opportunity. Over the next 3 days, the humans prepared. They evacuated most civilians from but left some volunteers to make the city look occupied. They positioned troops along the route. They set traps in the sand and prepared ambush points. And they waited. On the 14th day since the landing, the army began its march. 5,000 soldiers, their remaining operational vehicles and supplies for a 3-day operation. Axe led from the front, determined to finally achieve a victory. The first 10 kilometers went slowly but successfully. The aliens moved in formation, cautious but steady. The desert was quiet, too quiet. Then the sun reached its peak. The temperature hit 57 degrees. Inside their armor, the soldiers were suffering. The cooling systems ran at maximum capacity, draining power from other suit functions. The soft sand began. Vehicles that had worked fine on firm ground now sank with each rotation of their wheels. Soldiers had to push. Progress slowed to a crawl. The humans watched from a distance and did nothing. The desert was doing their work for them. By noon, the army had covered only 20 kilometers. Soldiers were collapsing. Medical staff could not keep up with heat casualties. Equipment was failing at an alarming rate, and they still had 120 kilometers to go. That was when Wu's forces attacked. Not a major assault, just harassment. Sniper fire from hidden positions. A few rockets at vehicles, then disappearing before the aliens could respond. It forced them to stop, take defensive positions, and waste time searching for enemies who were not there. "This is taking too long," Axe said. "At this rate, we will not reach the city for 5 days." "Commander, we should turn back," urged. "This is not working." "We do not retreat," Axe shouted. We do not lose to primitives." But in his heart he knew was right. They were losing. They had already lost. The question was whether he would admit it before his entire army died in the sand. As the sun set on the 14th day, the army was strung out across 30 kilometers of desert. They were exhausted, low on supplies, and demoralized. They had not even fought a real battle yet. The desert itself had defeated them. Jin watched from a hill and spoke into his radio. "All units hold positions. Let them struggle. Tomorrow we hit them hard." The battle for Earth was turning into a slow, grinding defeat for the invaders, and they still did not understand why. Commander Axe sat in his command vehicle and stared at the map. His army was dying, not from battle, from thirst, heat, and exhaustion. After 3 days of marching toward, they had covered only 60 kilometers, less than half the distance, and they had lost 800 soldiers. "Commander, we must turn back," said for the 10th time. "We cannot continue like this." Around them, soldiers lay in whatever shade they could find. The sun was merciless. Even with cooling systems running at maximum power, the suits could not keep up. Some soldiers had removed their helmets, gasping for air, despite knowing the air was hot enough to burn their lungs. Medical tents were full. Doctors worked desperately to treat heat stroke, dehydration, and respiratory failure from sand inhalation. They had used half their medical supplies already, and the operation was supposed to last 3 days. It was only day 3, and they were nowhere near their target. "Water report," Axe demanded. The supply officer looked grim. "We have enough for 2 more days at strict rationing, maybe 3 if we reduce to emergency levels. But Commander, the recycling systems are failing. The sand has contaminated the filters. We cannot purify water fast enough." Axe closed his eyes. This was supposed to be easy. Land on a primitive planet, show strength, force surrender. Instead, they were trapped in a desert, slowly dying of thirst while the humans watched. "How did they survive in this?" he asked quietly. No one had an answer. That night, a team of local fighters approached the alien supply lines. They moved silently through the darkness, their feet knowing the sand like old friends. The aliens had guards, but the guards were exhausted and demoralized. Their night vision equipment was failing, clogged with sand. Found what he was looking for, the water recycling units, large machines that purified and stored water. He planted small charges, timed to explode at dawn. Then he and his team melted back into the darkness. When the charges exploded, the aliens lost their remaining functional water systems. Now they had only what was in storage containers. 2 days of water, maybe. Axe received the report and felt something he had never experienced in 30 years of military service. True fear. Not fear of death in combat. Fear of dying slowly, helplessly, in an environment that gave no mercy. "Send a message to High Command," he ordered. "Request immediate extraction." Looked relieved. Finally, sense was prevailing. But when the response came 12 hours later, it was not what they expected. Extraction. The Empire does not retreat from primitive planets. Victory is expected within 1 cycle. Reinforcements are not available. Succeed with current forces or face consequences upon return. Axe read the message 3 times. They were abandoned. High Command would rather let them die than admit the Empire had miscalculated. To request further help would be to acknowledge that Earth was not primitive, that humans were not weak, that they had failed. "Then we have one choice," Axe said grimly. "We reach the city, we take hostages, we force the humans to surrender and provide us with water and supplies. It is our only option." "Commander, we will lose hundreds more soldiers just reaching the city," protested. "Then we lose hundreds," Axe shouted. "It is better than losing all of us to thirst in this cursed desert." The march resumed at dawn, but now it was not an attack. It was a desperate scramble for survival. The army moved as fast as they could, abandoning broken equipment, leaving behind the weakest soldiers with promises to return for them. They knew they would not keep those promises. Jin watched the alien army's desperation and felt no pity. They had come to conquer Earth, to enslave humanity. Now they were learning what humans had known for thousands of years. The desert does not care about your intentions. It only cares if you can survive. "They are heading straight for now," reported. "No more caution, no more strategy, just a straight march." "Let them come," Jin said. "Major has the city prepared." Major was 40 years old, an engineer and military officer who specialized in urban defense. When he learned the aliens were coming, he had 3 days to turn into a trap. "We cannot fight them head-on," explained to his team. "But we can use the city itself against them. They are desperate for water and shelter. We give them what looks like both, and we make them pay for it." First he flooded the main streets. Water was precious, but this was war. The water sat on the pavement, cooling the concrete, creating humidity in the air. It also created false heat signatures that confused alien scanners. Next he placed mirrors and reflective surfaces on buildings. The sun bounced off them, creating blinding glare. Alien sensors, designed to detect energy signatures, went haywire with all the reflected sunlight. He set up speakers that played recordings of people talking, vehicles moving, and general city noise. The sounds came from different directions, making it seem like the city was fully occupied when only a few hundred fighters remained. Finally, he prepared false water sources, large tanks of contaminated water mixed with sand and other particles. Water the aliens could detect with their scanners, but water that would make them sick if they drank it. On the 18th day the army reached. They looked like ghosts. Their armor was scratched and damaged. Many had removed helmets despite the danger. They moved slowly like very old beings. Axe stood at the city edge and saw streets full of water, buildings that could provide shade, and sensor readings showing the city was occupied. He also saw no resistance, no soldiers, no weapons pointed at them. "Where are they?" he asked. "Our scans show heat signatures throughout the city," a sensor operator reported. "But they seem confused, multiple conflicting readings." "I do not care," Axe said. "We need water and shelter. Advance into the city, secure any water sources, take prisoners if you find them." The army entered. Immediately things went wrong. The water on the streets created humidity their suits could not handle. Cooling systems, already struggling, began to fail completely. Soldiers opened their suits to breathe and were hit with superheated air rising from the wet pavement. The mirrors blinded them. Every turn revealed another burst of reflected sunlight. Targeting systems shut down. Communication became impossible with all the interference. And then the attacks began. Not from the front, not from obvious positions, but from windows, rooftops, and basements. Human fighters with simple rifles. Shoot, move, shoot again from a different position. The aliens tried to return fire, but their energy weapons overheated within seconds in the humid air. "This is a trap," shouted. "Commander, we must withdraw." But withdrawing meant going back into the desert with no water. Staying meant fighting in a city designed to kill them. There was no good choice. coordinated the defense from a bunker. They are panicking. Good. Keep the pressure on, but do not take risks. Let the environment do most of the work. Soldiers found the large water tanks and drank desperately. Within hours, half of them were sick, their systems unable to process the contaminated water. Medical staff were overwhelmed. As night fell, the temperature in the city dropped, but the buildings held heat, creating strange air currents that confused alien sensors even more. Human fighters, equipped with night vision and intimate knowledge of the city, moved freely while aliens stumbled through streets they did not understand. Doctor watched the battle through satellite feeds from headquarters. She turned to the gathered commanders and said what everyone was thinking. They are finished. They cannot hold the city. They cannot retreat to their base. They have no water, no supplies, and no hope of reinforcement. This is the end game. But she felt no joy, just sadness. They had come expecting easy victory. They had underestimated Earth. More specifically, they had underestimated the desert and the humans who knew how to survive in it. "Should we offer them surrender?" asked the general. "Not yet," Jin said. "They need to understand completely. They need to know without doubt that they lost to a planet they thought was primitive. That lesson must be absolute or others will come." That night, Axe sat in a half-destroyed building and accepted reality. His army was destroyed, not by superior weapons or advanced technology, but by sand, heat, and human endurance. They had made every possible mistake, starting with choosing the desert as a landing site. "Tomorrow we surrender," he told. "High Command will execute us for this failure. Perhaps, but we will be alive to face that. Better than dying of thirst in this desert." Around them, soldiers lay exhausted and defeated. They had traveled across star systems. They had conquered worlds. But Earth, a primitive planet, had beaten them. The desert had beaten them. And the humans who lived in that desert had taught them a terrible lesson about adaptation, endurance, and the price of underestimating your enemy. As dawn broke on the 19th day, white flags began to appear over alien positions. They were surrendering. The battle for Earth was over. The desert had won. The white flags appeared first on the alien vehicles, then on buildings they occupied, and finally on the command center itself. Commander Axe stood in the morning sun, his armor scratched and damaged, and waited for the humans to arrive. Captain Jin led the coalition force into the center of. Behind him came soldiers from 8 nations, walking together as one army. They were tired but victorious. More importantly, they were healthy. While the aliens had collapsed in the heat, the humans had thrived. "I am Commander Axe of the Empire," the alien said in broken but understandable English. Their translation devices still worked, at least. "I surrender my forces to you." Jin nodded. "Your soldiers will be given water and medical attention, but first, we need to secure all weapons and technology." "Agreed." Over the next hours, soldiers laid down their weapons, energy rifles that had failed in the heat, armor that had become prisons instead of protection, equipment that had been designed for controlled environments, not for sand and sun. Doctor arrived with medical teams. She looked at the alien soldiers with professional concern. They were sick, dehydrated, and suffering from heat injuries. Despite being enemies, they needed help. "Get them into shade," she ordered. "Give them water slowly. Too much at once will make them worse. Treat the heat stroke cases first." A human doctor asked, "Why are we helping them? They came to conquer us." "Because we are not them," said simply. "We do not let beings suffer, even enemies. That is what makes us human." As medical treatment began, Jin and his team searched the alien command center. They found communication equipment, data files, and most importantly, a working transmitter that could send messages across space. "Can we use this?" Jin asked Minyu. The engineer studied the equipment. "Yes, it is designed for long-range transmission. We can send a message to their home world if we want." Perfect, Jin said. I have an idea. While Jin worked on his plan, Axe was brought to a holding area. Major sat across from him with a translator device. Why did you land in the desert? Asked. Of all the places on Earth, why there? Axe looked tired. Our computers analyzed Earth. They identified the desert as low strategic value, no major population, no military bases, perfect for establishing a forward position without immediate resistance. Your computers were wrong. Our computers did not understand this planet. They saw empty space and thought it meant weakness. They did not realize that empty space in a desert is the strongest defense of all. Nothing can survive there except what has learned to adapt. Nodded slowly. You have technology we cannot match. Ships that travel between stars, weapons that fire energy beams, but you did not have the one thing that matters most in the desert. What is that? Respect. Respect for the environment, respect for the land. You thought you could force your way through with advanced technology, but the desert does not care about technology. It only cares if you understand it. Axe was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "We thought Earth would be easy. We thought humans were primitive because your technology is simple. We did not understand that simple technology that works is better than complex technology that fails. Now you understand." Yes, too late, but yes. Meanwhile, Captain Jin was working with Doctor, Engineer Minyu, and Pilot Sora on something unprecedented. They were going to send a message to the Empire. Not a threat, not a warning, but a lesson. We need to show them everything, Jin said. They need to see exactly what happened here. If we just tell them we won, they might think we got lucky. We need them to understand why they lost. Pulled up footage collected over the past 19 days. Satellite images, combat recordings, video of sandstorms hitting the alien base, medical reports showing hundreds of heat casualties, equipment failures, confused soldiers stumbling through the desert. We show them this, she said. We show them their army breaking down day by day, not because of our weapons but because of the desert itself. Minyu added technical analysis. I can include data on how their equipment failed, temperature readings, sand particle analysis, everything that went wrong, make it educational, show them exactly why their technology was inadequate. Sora suggested, we also show them the human side, and guiding troops through the desert, Wu's forces using simple tactics, our old aircraft succeeding where their advanced ships failed. Show them that we won with knowledge and adaptation, not with better weapons. Over 3 days, they compiled everything into a comprehensive documentary. It showed the invasion from start to finish, the alien landing, the harsh environment, the equipment failures, the human response, the desperate march to the final surrender. But most importantly, it showed why Earth was not an easy target. It showed the desert, ancient and merciless. It showed humans who had learned to live in that desert over thousands of years. It showed adaptation, endurance, and respect for the environment. The message concluded with Jin speaking directly to the camera. Empire, you sent your soldiers to conquer Earth. You thought we would be easy because we have simple technology, because we fight among ourselves, because we seem divided and weak. You made a fatal mistake. He gestured to the desert visible through the window behind him. You landed in one of the harshest environments on our planet, a place where temperatures reach extremes, where sand destroys machinery, where water is scarce, and where survival requires not technology but understanding. Humans have lived in deserts for 10,000 years. We have learned to thrive where others would die. The camera panned across footage of the alien base, battered and damaged, of soldiers suffering in the heat, of equipment failing. Your army could not last 3 weeks in our desert. You had advanced weapons, but they overheated. You had armor, but it trapped heat. You had computers, but sand destroyed them. You had everything except what matters most, the ability to adapt. Then the camera showed human soldiers, and smiling despite the harsh conditions. Wu's squad moving confidently through terrain that had defeated the aliens. Farmers, herders, teachers, and engineers who had helped win the battle. If you cannot survive in our deserts, how did you expect to conquer our cities, our mountains, our oceans, our forests? Earth is not an easy planet. It is diverse, challenging, and beautiful, and humans have adapted to every part of it. Jin's expression became serious. This is not a threat, it is a fact. We do not want war, but we will defend our home, not just with weapons but with knowledge, endurance, and the understanding that technology alone is not enough. You must respect the environment you fight in. You must adapt. You must learn. The camera pulled back to show the entire team. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and local people standing together. Turn back your fleets. Leave Earth alone. We are not easy prey. We are survivors, and this planet is our home. The message was transmitted using the communication system. It would take weeks to reach their home world, but it would arrive with full audio and video intact. Do you think they will listen? Sora asked after the transmission was sent. They will watch, Jin said. Whether they listen is their choice, but they cannot say they were not warned. 3 months passed. The prisoners were held humanely. They were given water, food, and medical care. Many of them had never experienced such treatment. In the Empire, defeated soldiers were often executed, but humans treated them with dignity. Axe spent his time learning about Earth. He read books about desert survival. He talked with Doctor about ecology. He learned that what he had thought was empty wasteland was actually a complex ecosystem that humans had studied and respected for. We were arrogant, he admitted to Jin one day. We thought technology made us superior. We forgot the most basic lesson of survival. Understand your environment or it will destroy you. Will you share this lesson with your empire? Jin asked. If they let me live long enough to deliver it. The response from the Empire came after 4 months. It was brief. All invasion forces near Earth system recalled. Further operations suspended pending strategic review. They did not apologize. They did not acknowledge defeat, but they retreated. The message had worked. And returned to their lives in the desert. The alien wreckage was slowly being buried by the sand, as the desert reclaimed what was always its territory. They stood on a dune one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky orange and purple. Do you think they will come back? Asked. Maybe, said, but if they do, they will think twice about landing in the desert. They laughed. It was a good sound in the quiet evening air. Captain Jin received medals from multiple nations, but what he valued most was a letter from Axe before the prisoners were eventually repatriated. It said, "Thank you for teaching me what true strength is. It is not about having the best weapons. It is about understanding, adaptation, and respect. I was a conqueror who learned to be a student. If I survive my return home, I will share this lesson. Earth won not because humans are strong, but because you are wise." Doctor returned to her research station. She had new funding now, supported by grateful governments. Her work on desert ecology was suddenly considered vitally important for planetary defense. She smiled at the irony. It had always been important. People just had not noticed until aliens tried to invade. Major wrote a training manual on urban desert defense. It became required reading in military academies around the world. The lesson was clear. Understand your environment and use it as an ally. Engineer Minu continued developing technology that worked in extreme conditions, but now he had alien equipment to study. He learned what not to do, which was just as valuable as learning what to do. Pilot Sora trained a new generation of pilots. Remember, she told them, fancy technology is useless if it does not work when you need it. Simple and reliable beats complex and fragile every time. And in military academies across the world, a new case study was taught. The Battle of the Gobi Desert. how Earth had defeated a technologically superior invasion force not through advanced weapons, but through environmental knowledge, human endurance, and the simple truth that adaptation matters more than technology. The desert wind continued to blow as it had for millions of years. It covered the last traces of the alien invasion, burying their equipment and erasing their presence. The sand remembered nothing and no one. It simply existed, harsh and beautiful, waiting for the next being who would underestimate it. And somewhere in the vast galaxy, the Empire watched the documentary again and again. Some dismissed it as propaganda, but others understood. Earth was not primitive. Earth was ancient, complex, and defended by beings who had learned to survive in its harshest places. The message was clear. We thought Earth would be easy to invade until we landed in the desert. Now we know better. And so did anyone else who might have similar ideas.